My name is Miss Vanity Sin, and I feel like I realized I was into kink somewhere around the time frame between 2005 and 2006. I was still living in Houston, Texas. Actually, I was not living in Houston, Texas. I was living in Texas, but I was visiting Houston, and I met a guy at a club called Numbers. And at the time, I was dating someone, but I just felt very unfulfilled. I felt like it just wasn't giving me what I needed. Something was missing. I met this guy. He was really cool. He was a little older than me, probably about 4 years. He was good looking, smart, and just had like this vampire vibe. And he was first pursuing me, and we eventually became friends, and we maintained a long distance phone relationship, and it was not sexual. It was far from sexual, far from flirtatious, to be quite honest. But we used to have like really interesting conversations about just sexuality in general, life, psychology. And he used to love to tell me about how much he loved women's bodies, goddess worship, their body odor, stuff like that. I was just fascinated by the fact that this guy who just mentally stimulated me in ways that I had never felt before at that time. I think I was like not even 21. I was like, where are more men like him? And then he was so big into foot fetishes and stuff like that and armpit fetishes. And my boyfriend at the time was like so grossed out by feet. And just the comparison. I mean, I wasn't even serious about the boyfriend that I had at the time, but I was just like, good Lord, they're like night and day. Where are more men like this guy? And that just kind of took me down the rabbit hole, as they say, in a direction where I was looking for more men like that, guys like that. And I had already had a taste, coincidentally, in high school. Two of my friends, one of them wanted to worship my feet, the other one said I was such a goddess. So once I met this other guy, I was older, I realized, okay, there are definitely more guys like them, and I need to find them. And that's when I knew I belong in the kink scene. I realized I'm a dom, and I started to pursue it.
And how did this lead to becoming a professional dominatrix?
Well, this takes me to the MySpace days. I was working with a local photographer in South Texas. She would go by the nickname of Cell, Cell. And we did a lot of like fetish, artsy, black and white shots, just very gothy look, heavy eyeshadow, stuff like that. And this gentleman who was in Corpus Christi, Texas, who would film fetish clips, a lot of like giantess, foot fetish, heels, stuff like that. He contacted me and he was like, I love your look. Are you familiar with kink? Are you familiar with fetishes? And I was like, yeah, totally. He's like, okay, well, are you comfortable coming, it's a 2 hour drive. So are you coming up here and filming some content and just see where it goes? And I was like, okay. And, I was just looking to experiment. I was looking for opportunities. And coincidentally, my brother and my mother were backing me up, and we all drove up. And I remember introducing myself for the first time as Mistress Vanity Sin. It just came out. I always just went by Vanity Sin. I wasn't even Miss Vanity Sin. I was just Vanity Sin. That's it. That was like my model name. And he put out that first clip, and immediately he said that so many men were emailing him. Who is she? I want to meet her. I want to do a session with her. I want her to trample me. I want to worship that goddess, et cetera, et cetera. And he would set up emails for all of the models who would work with him. And I just, started answering all these emails. And these guys were asking me for sessions online, in person. And I started there, and it pushed me to go even further. And I started doing phone sessions because this gentleman in the first place mentioned to me that he was like looking to pursue getting into selling voice clips. So I just kind of started to look into it on my own, and I discovered Night Flirt and Talk Sugar. Talk Sugar doesn't even exist anymore. And I began to experiment, and offer phone sessions and talk to guys and cam sessions and texting sessions. And eventually I would build relationships and meet them in person once I felt comfortable. And I was learning from them, and they were teaching me things as subs, because it's very interesting when you are mentored by a dom. Like right now I'm mentoring someone, you learn from her perspective. But when you learn what a sub goes through, when you whip him, when you sound him, when you electrocute him, it's a whole other perspective. So that's a lot of like how I learned and how I cut my teeth in the scene. I wasn't really mentored. So all of this eventually flourished around 2012. I moved to Las Vegas and I just blossomed into Miss Vanity Sin. I started putting myself out there on ads and whatnot, like Dickie Virgin, Eros, Pandemos, all that. And I haven't stopped since then. I made that choice and I've been very happy.
So you were mainly like mentored more by the subs than an actual dominatrix?
That is correct. I have admired
interesting.
many dominatrixes. I have read many books. I've always been a bit of a mad scientist, and I love to experiment on my own. At least that's like what my friends call me. And yeah, I never was under the wing of a dom. I never worked in a dungeon. I just experimented a lot with friends, with other subs. And even as I started slowly in the pro dom scene, I have so many subs who were interested in sharing their experiences with me, and I loved it. And then, even I married a man for a while, for 3 years, who was a very kinky sub, and he himself also taught me a lot of things, both from a business perspective and also from a sub kink perspective, things that I don't know that maybe you might not learn as a dom if you're being mentored by someone, but either way, I learned a lot and I'm very grateful.
And how long did it take you to feel comfortable when you were first starting out, like in person?
I had already experimented enough. I think immediately after like a year, I just felt pretty confident. And 2 years, 3 years later, I just felt even more confident. So yeah, pretty quickly.
And do you have any favorite toys that you like to use in sessions?
Few, definitely I love a leash and collar, but that's just I love the visual aesthetic of it. I love seeing the collar on a sub, whether you're male or female. I love the leash. I love how the leather starts to smell as it gets warmed up against your skin. That's why I'm wearing leather gloves, because I'm a big leather fetishist. Toys though. I think I would have to say my Florentine floggers. They have been with me for so long, probably for almost as long as I've been a pro dom. I've even had to get them fixed. They were my sub girl took them to a local flogger guy, and he repaired them for me. But I've performed with them. I've traveled with them. I've mentored some of my sub girls with them. Flogging can be an art form, and I love Florentine floggers. Just it's definitely tricky to use two at once, and I love pushing myself to see if I can aim perfectly and hit you where I want at the same time, and just test my stamina. So I think out of all of my toys, and I have a lot, that's definitely my favorite.
And what would you say are some of your specialties?
Well, for sure, erotic hypnosis, because that's one of my personal fetishes, and I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. I love role plays, especially when they involve anything medical, whether it's nurse going from this nurturing nurse to being this sadistic, manipulative bitch, to the doctor role play, especially therapist. I think that has to be my ultimate favorite, next to anything that has to do, with like clinical medical role plays. But just because it comes so natural to me, like I just, did a role play like that a couple of days ago, and my sub girl that I'm mentoring was watching, and she just, she loves how I can just go from this caring, understanding therapist, psychoanalyzing you, helping you, maybe guiding you down the right path. And then all of a sudden, he's using her unethical methods and you're tied down and you're being manipulated into, you know, being a sissy maid, a cuckold, or whatever. Uh, I love pony play. I think that's definitely one of my specialties when it comes to animal play. You know, I love puppy play, pig play, pony play, but because I grew up riding horses, dressage was one of my favorite things as a child. Show jumping, I love pony play, and it just gets me. I don't know. It just the power exchange is what really gets me. And I think in general, just all forms of power exchange are my specialty, whether it's psychological or physical. And I think it's more the psychological. Like you can, it's one thing to overpower someone physically, tie them down, pin them down, wrestle them or whatever, but to get inside their head is a whole other thing. And to make them almost feel like as if you already know them, that's very tricky. It's taken me a lot of years to sharpen those skills. So I would say those are my top favorite specialties.
When we were filming the documentary, I was really impressed on how you were doing the erotic hypnosis. Can you talk about your interest in that?
I became very interested with erotic hypnosis. Well, with hypnosis in general, since I was a kid, all the way back to I think maybe the age of like 5 or 6. And in the documentary, I think I mentioned where I was trying to hypnotize a little boy. I mean, I was little myself. I think I was like 6 or 7, and he was a little bit younger than me. And I love, again, the power exchange. It's almost under the genre of like forced. I love just using my voice, using my eyes. I believe that there are certain tones and colors that you can use, even hand gestures, to just bring a person into an altered state of consciousness and just start making them feel so comfortable in your presence. And I love how with erotic hypnosis, you can use those words to like pierce that person's thoughts through their ears, through their mind, through their eyes. Your power is emanating from you into this person. And, you know, I think with erotic hypnosis, it's kind of sexy to incorporate a little bit of witchiness into it, a little bit of witchcraft, a little bit of mysticism, being charmed and enchanted. That's everything that excites me and what draws me to erotic hypnosis. And that's what I like to do with you. And erotic hypnosis can be something where it's just simple power exchange. You are obsessed with goddess, you love goddess, you're devoted to goddess, maybe even triggered constantly by a color. Or you can be conditioned with MP3s and, phone calls, in-person sessions, whatever, to just get you to become a better sub, a better sissy, a better, whatever it is that might be that the problem as a sub or the direction that we want to go in. Perhaps you might find that pegging is a bit of a problem. You might find that your body is resistant. So maybe we could take it, a step further and use erotic hypnosis to get you to relax and to really open up and just take it. And so
How
that's
long
what I
did
love
it
about it.
how long did it take you to learn hypnosis?
It was a progression. I would feel that I learned at first at home, just reading books, self-taught. Um, my mom exposed me a lot to spirituality and different forms of like psychic stuff, tarot cards, things like that. So I was surrounded by a lot of books. I read a lot. I practiced on my own. Then eventually I started to practice on Night Flirt when I became, an online dom, and just started to come up with my own methods and my own scripts, just trusting myself, and it worked. It would work, and I would use some of my guys online as guinea pigs. Then eventually, I just took the plunge and decided to become a clinical hypnotherapist. I studied at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, and a lot of what they taught me, I already knew just some of the basics. Of course, they took it to a whole other level of how to help people with depression, high blood pressure, anesthesia, stuff like that. But it just sharpened my skills further. And I also feel like now I'm actually able to not only have that erotic power control over someone, but if I'm having trouble with a sub, let's just say if he's struggling with depression or whatever, or addictions that are getting in the way of our relationship, can actually help them and guide them to be, you know, a better sub, a better good boy, or a good girl. So, yeah.
You mentioned witchcraft, and I really had to dig into the occult when I was making the Goetia Diaries. Can you talk about that a little bit, your interest?
Yes. I definitely come from a long line of women who you would say are hereditary witches on both sides of my family, especially on my mother's. My mother was one, her mother was one, and her mother was one. So, like, that's mother, grandmother, great grandmother, and probably great grandmother.
Oh,
My grandfather was also involved in witchcraft. He loved necromancy too, and doing seances and stuff. On my father's side, both my grandmother and my great grandmother were very into like more like black magic, a lot of Satanism, stuff like that. And on my mom's side, they were more ladies who could heal, but they could also hurt you and hex you. On my father's side, they were just very evil, very selfish. That was their style of, witchcraft. And I I kind of felt like a little bit in the middle for a while. I definitely studied a lot of high magic. There's high magic and low sorcery, a lot of goetic magic, a lot of Kabbalistic magic, especially. There's two sides to the Kabbalistic tree, the Sephirotic side, which is like the angelic, and then there's the Qliphothic, which is the demonic side, and that requires a lot of mental discipline. But that excited me for some reason, so I pursued a lot of that, and I it's definitely something that will probably never leave my life. And I remember the first time I received my tarot deck, I was so happy. My mother, I used to play with her tarot decks when I was little, and I was like 5, 6. And then around the age of 7 is when she first bought me my first tarot deck. And it felt very special. And, not to get emotional, but my mother did recently pass away in March. So yeah, I've had that tarot deck. I'm 41 now. I've had it since I was 6 or 7, so it's been a long time since I've had it, and I learned so much from her. So I'm grateful, and yeah, I would say these days I'm a little bit more of a white witch. I try not to be so evil and hurt people or hex anyone.
it's a good thing. How has being a dominatrix affected your relationships outside the dungeon?
I love this question. First of all, my family is very supportive. At first, it was a little weird, but once they knew what I do, they were very comfortable. And, my mom was incredibly supportive. And so is my father. He's still alive. My oldest brother passed away, but he was supportive. And now it's just my other brother. I have a lot of friends who are very supportive, but I'm not going to say I'm surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of friends. I keep a tight circle. I have, I can count them probably on one hand, but they support me, they elevate me, they're proud of me, they want to see me shine. They know I'm doing this interview, and they're like, yay, go you. That's awesome. They're not being catty or envious. I don't surround myself with people like that. Am I dating anyone? No, that's a bit of a problem. At one point, I was married, but he was very subby, very kinky. Had a bit of a, we had more of a lesbian cuck type relationship, but he had a cuck tendency in him. So I guess that's why he didn't mind me being a pro. He just never felt jealous or weird. And that's something that I've encountered even from subby men who are, in the kink scene, and they know what I do. They know I'm a pro and I'm a lifestyle dom, but they just, sometimes I'll do an overnight session with someone and they'll feel very weird because I'm sleeping over at someone's hotel room. And I'm like, no, I'm, I'll tell them, look, I'm sleeping over because I'm going to do a special kind of toilet session in the morning or something. I'm not like, I don't know what you're thinking, but the drama just gets in the way. And so right now I'm much more focused on my life, my business. So I just try to have quality family, quality friends just surround me, and that keeps me happy. So it's been both good and bad and a little strange, my relationships outside of the dungeon, but I'm not complaining. It's not stopping me.
What would you say is your favorite thing about being in a, I guess, dungeon or play space or the environment of a session?
Being surrounded by all of your equipment. Here in Las Vegas, because people, especially a lot of my clients, they come in, they're here for business. Sometimes they just prefer to have me go to them. And that's become my specialty, out calls. I bring the dungeon experience to you. And so many of my clients are all, on the strip in all these beautiful casino hotels. So I don't mind, but I have to plan, I have to pack, and I have to prepare. I like to be a little over prepared, but nonetheless, I'm limited. And when you have your own dungeon, when you have your own studio, or you're at home, you're surrounded by all your toys. And if you just get this damn creative whim to pull something out and try it, and your sub is willing to go down that path with you, you can do it. You just have everything at your disposal. So when I used to have a studio, that's what I loved about it. There's a bit more cleanup, yes, but you relax more. You don't have to plan as much, and you have everything at your disposal. Like, just, how can I put it? Almost like an artist who has all of their paint and paint brushes, spatulas, whatever. All of your tools are there, and your sub is your canvas, and you can do whatever you want. That's the difference to me.
And do you have like any rituals or anything you do to help prepare for the session, like play certain type of music?
I usually like to listen to my playlist. I have accumulated, like, good Lord, probably almost 200 songs that I love to focus on lyrics. Just the songs range from like Dwight Yoakam to Garbage to Sisters of Mercy, um, 69 Eyes, just a little bit of everything. So, but it's the lyrics, it's the words that I'm looking for to just inspire me and to get me to forget about everything and just get in the zone. And I'll spend like probably 2 hours or an hour and a half getting ready for a session, doing my hair, doing my makeup, packing my equipment, and listening to music and centering myself. So that's what I do.
And what is your favorite type of music to play during a session, or do you play music at all?
What's on my session playlist?
Oh,
So it's just like a variety of songs.
Same thing.
Yeah.
What is subspace and top space to you?
I love that question. I feel like subspace is when you take someone to an altered state of consciousness where they completely let go. I'm the kind of dom that likes to play without a safe word for that reason, because you're coming to me and you want to relax. I mean, let's face it, pro dom sessions are not cheap. So, you're already investing your time, your money, your effort to get into this session. You're already nervous. You're already anxious. Stubby people, men and women, already have these tendencies in them. So you have to keep that in mind. And at least I keep that in mind as a Dom, because when you go into subspace, that helps me go into Dom space. And so, we'll talk, we'll chat. And, once we start the session, then I want to just see you drop down into subspace where your eyes begin to dilate. Your breathing is slowing down. You're relaxed, but yet at the same time, your pulse is rating. You're excited. Your pulse is racing and you're excited. And just at that moment, the session shifts into like this primal state. And I feel like a bit of a predator as I go into Dom space. And I know I have you right where I want you. And I know that you're not quite sure what I'm going to do next in the session. You've already given me free will to do what I want. Yet you're not thinking, oh, yellow, oh, red. You're just like, fuck it. I'm just going to go with it. If she chooses to choke me out, I'm going to go with it. If she wants to electrocute me, I'm going to go with it. If she wants to spin on me, peg me, whatever, whisper sensual things into my ear, I don't care. I'm just going to trust her and do it. And that just like will send me into top space. And I can last it. Like if I go there and the energy is just right, I'll be in top space for a couple of hours. It takes a while for me to come down. And then it gets to a point where it feels like as if we're dancing. I think I've mentioned that before in other interviews, but it does feel like it's on a subconscious level that you're in Dom space, I'm in top space, I'm taking control, you're trusting me, I can push your limits, and it's a beautiful thing.
What is a session that stands out to you, like a crazy session or just one that is memorable for you?
I've had a few that are very memorable, but I think the most memorable will always be a session I did with a German sub. This was years ago when I still had a studio. And he wanted me to treat him like a lab rat. He sent me medical fetish clips from, content that was from Japan. So it was like bizarre on a whole other level. Like American medical fetish, German medical fetish, and then Japanese medical fetish is like, okay, like you're like a science experiment. That's pretty much it.
Wow.
So I gave him a list to, buy a bunch of things, fruit, water, baking soda. It was actually carbonated water, milk, eggs, just different things. And he came. We were going through our session. I was doing all sorts of stuff, electrocuting him, things like that. We even did a little bit of erotic hypnosis, a little bit of intox. And it was already going pretty extreme enough. And he was already like feeling, for the lack of a better word, pretty effed up in a good way. And so I take him into the bathroom and he's tied up. I remember wrists and ankles were all chained up together. And I'm preparing a bowl full of probably half a dozen eggs or a dozen, half a gallon of milk or so. And I'm whisking it up and pouring it into an enema bag, a blue rectangle enema bag, have it hanged up and ready to go. And inserting it into him, the tube. And we're just letting it flow. And he just takes it all in. He's loving it. He's just in this beautiful, screwed up subspace. And he knows that he has this milk and egg enema inside of him. And I'm not giving him permission to touch himself. And then once after like a couple of minutes go by and I feel like it's been enough, I let him release. The odor will always be a memorable one. The scent of milk and egg inside a human body coming out was just, it was disgusting and it was beautiful at the same time. And I loved it and he loved it and he just exploded in bliss. And he was very much a happy boy, but it was a very messy session to clean up afterwards. There was just like, just all sorts of stuff everywhere.
I
A lot of
bet.
equipment to clean up. But luckily that scene was in the bathroom in the tub, so that was, the easiest to clean up, but it was very memorable. And I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but I've done that inspired me to do all sorts of other enemas with people over the years after that.
It's very interesting. What advice do you have for someone who's just starting out and is exploring BDSM for the first time? So more like a submissive than a dominatrix.
Okay. Well, if you're subby and you're looking to get out there, first of all, you have to keep in mind that you're not weird. I feel like I get so many subby boys coming to me and like, oh, I'm weird. Oh, I know I'm odd. Oh, I'm no one's gonna want me, or oh, I'm a loser, and you'll never want a guy like me. And I'm like, well, first of all, where do you think dominant women get the men and women that they date? Dominant women need subby men and subby women. So you're not weird. You're okay. Because then that makes us weird too. So, and I would say set that aside, try to set your fears aside, and look for the local kink community. Like recently, I've been getting more involved in the local kink community, and people are very accepting. People at local fetish parties, play parties, they just want to have fun. They want to be accepted. They are not going to judge you. So start with that. Meet local doms that host play parties. People who are, guys who are masters. There are rope parties, spanking parties. I just recently went to an all femdom party, but subs are allowed to come, but only dominant women are allowed to be there, not men. And all the subs are there. Some of them are very shy. You can tell there's a couple like a fly on the wall. There was even a guy on a wheelchair. But guess what? There was a lady there who was interested in him. She was talking to him. She helped him. Eventually, 2 hours later, he's on a spanking bench getting spanked. Hey, that's awesome. People are more understanding than you think. And if you are interested in doing a session with a pro, like there was one guy I recently met at a fetish party where, he was a little bit like, oh my God, I can't believe I did a session with a pro. That was scary. So I'd rather do lifestyle sessions. Well, if you do a session with a pro, get to know her a little bit. What's her social media? Yes, everybody has a website, great. But does she talk in her social media? Like her reels, is she talking? Can you hear her voice? Can you get an idea of what she's like? Can you interact with her maybe on Night Flirt, Sex Panther, do a texting session? Just get a feel of what her style is, and email her, talk to her. More than likely, she might seem a little unapproachable, but she's probably a lot nicer than you think and is happy to take you to that subby space that you want. And if she's a lifestyle dom, I would say that helps too, because she's probably looking to build a stable of guys, and you can be part of that stable. And if you don't know what that word means, it's an old school term that's like your group of subs, the girls and men in your life as a dom, your harem. Back in the day, you call it a stable. And I, because I'm a woman who likes pony play and is into dressage, I like to use that term. So that's my advice. Set your fears aside, get into the community, explore, have fun. And even I'll tell you this. I've always been a little bit antisocial, but thanks to my sub girl, I've been getting more into the local community. And at first, even I was a little reserved. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. We all feel like that. Even Miss Vanity Sin. And I've been a pro for 12 years and in the lifestyle for 16. So that's my best advice.
And the flip side of that, for someone interested in being like a top, would you recommend the same thing, to visit like local parties and try to
The
network?
same thing. Yeah. And if you're looking to get mentored, find a lady the same way. Someone, who's relatable, approachable, and knowledgeable. I think that's important. Relatable, approachable, and knowledgeable. So yeah, basically the same advice.
And my last question is, how should someone reach out to you for a session?
Well, you can either email me or text me. Most of the time on ads, I'll have my site, my email, and you can text me. If you're too shy to text me, you can drop me an email, but nonetheless, when I respond back to you in my signature, it'll have my number and I'll probably tell you to text me. Um, I always like to get a little bit of a feel though, you know, as to whether you're going to be a good sub or not. And I would say my next bit of advice is when you approach a Dom, always be a gentleman. You can be shy, but just tell your Dom, hey, my name is Bob. This is what I'm looking for. Maybe I'm a novice, but I would really like to see you. Just be honest and open and be a gentleman, and that will be very appreciated.
And before we end this, I just wanted to say thank you for all your support of the magazines over the years and attending Sinical Ball and being part of the documentary. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. I love Sinical. I love Subspace. Always been a fan.
Thank you for listening to the Sinical Magazine podcast at www